So today, I want to take some time to talk to you guys about this new world that we live in where people can either work remotely, right? Or they could work hybrid, right? A little bit of work, a little bit at home. And I have worked in both. I'm going to tell you guys a little bit about my experience and also where I think this industry is heading over the next 5 to 10 years, the games industry. I think is incredibly exciting and I cannot wait to share with you guys. So let's get to it. All right. Welcome to another video. I hope you guys are doing absolutely excellent today. So, my name is Harvey Newman and I have been working in games for about 18 years now, and I absolutely love games development, and I have been working as an animator through the years as I actually worked in games. Now, I think that this new world that we live in is incredibly exciting, even though it's incredibly problematic, obviously, but I think it opens up a whole bunch of opportunities. Now, since the very beginning when I started working, whenever you get a job, doesn't matter what it is kind of granted, or it was kind of granted, and basically you wouldn't even have to ask because you would have to move to that company, right? So I have been fortunate to work with quite a lot of companies over the years, and I had to move quite a lot, especially here in the UK, both London, all the way to south of England and all the way to Scotland, Glasgow and Edinburgh. I worked in both cities, right? And everything in between. I've worked in Nottingham and Derby and all kinds of different places. And even when you actually come to work on an international company, so when I started working at DICE, I had to move to Sweden in order to work for them, right? So it was always about making sure that everybody is under the same roof, working in the same building as we are developing games. And I do remember a lot of times that me and my mates used to talk about, at work, used to talk about how comes can we not work from home? There is companies out there that already do this, and I think games development kind of lends itself to work from home, because what happens in the office when you work, even though you're working with others, you spend most of your time just honed in your own work because it's so intense and you have to focus so much that you spend most of the time, most of the weeks, just focusing on your own work, in your computer, heads down, all that goodness. There is something to be said about working in an environment where you can actually meet your mates, go and have a tea, go and have lunch together. All of that stuff still prevails and is still amazing. But the job in itself is almost like being an engineer. For everybody that is not familiar with the games industry, is what you think about a Facebook or Google or an Apple engineer. We kind of just spend our time in the computer. So if you spend so much time, why not go and actually work remotely? Now, things have shifted since back then, and now obviously because of the pandemic, unfortunately, things have changed in a huge way. Now, my experience when the pandemic hit was of actually starting a job as animation director, and that job was incredibly taxing and stressful, and there was a lot piled on top of me. And I fully thought when I first started that I cannot wait to go back to the office, because to me there was nothing more important than to be together with my team under the same roof, so I could actually take them out for lunch and mingle and just be friends, right? So I thought that was incredibly important to me. And for the first 6 months to about a year, I genuinely thought this kind of like idea that, how can I actually make this happen? And then I realized the pandemic was here for the long run. Now, I'm pretty sure all of your experiences are very similar to this, but your mind shifts into a gear of like, I need to be doing this for the long run. Therefore, I need to get used to what I have right now. That was actually the time about 6 months to a year later when I went, okay, so how can I actually rethink this way of working as a director and still unite my team and still bring them together and still make them feel good when we don't have each other in the office to kind of like be able to kind of like look over each other's screens or point at a screen and be able to kind of like say something. So I had to come up with all kinds of different ways to actually do this. Eventually, after a long time, and maybe I can do a video in the future if you're interested in knowing exactly what I've done in order to kind of like bring my team together, but comment down below if you'd like to know more. So after a while, we managed to make that happen, and that was beautiful. 2 years later, I have quit my job now as an animation director, but what has been true is that over 2 years period, I managed to do a job that I didn't thought it was possible to do remotely, a director job, and I did it to the best of my capabilities, and I believe I did it really, really well, right? So that tells me that working this way is incredibly viable nowadays, and I really think this is the way that is gonna go forward, right? And here's what I think that means for the future, for everybody that is watching this in the future. I know that you guys have it locked in. Some of the stuff that I'm going to say now probably doesn't make sense. But for the ones looking at this now in the present, where people don't know exactly where we stand, I believe that this is incredibly powerful for all animators out there, all game devs out there, because what this means is that the market has opened up for everybody around the globe that has talent to be able to work anywhere. And that statement is incredibly powerful, because I always thought that is kind of unfair. Like, I'm the son of immigrants. My parents are from these islands of Cape Verde, and they kind of came to Europe to have me so I could have a better future. But when I go back to Cape Verde and I see my cousins and everybody that stayed there, it's kind of unfair for me to have a better future than them just because I was born in a place that is different than theirs, right? So that is a very powerful idea in my mind, and I think this is true for all artists out there. I kind of feel like it's very unfair for somebody that lives in Japan or India or Brazil that is like as talented, or if not more talented, than somebody that lives in the US or Europe, and they are not open to the same opportunities just because of their location around the world. Now, this is where I think this changes everything, because now if I was to set up a studio, let's say, of my own that does animation only, let's say, I could actually tap into the talent all over the world and look at show reels and be like, I don't care where this person is at, I just care about their talent. Are they talented or not? Do they fit the criteria that I'm looking for or not? And then if they do, then I hire them, right? And I think that's a much better way to actually go about your job and hiring people around the world, especially people that live in places that are less fortunate than people living in Europe and America, right? So I think that's really, really awesome. So that's cause number one, that I think this is going to be better for all animators out there, all artists, all game devs. I think it's going to be really, really cool. The second thing, I think, is going to be all about life-work balance. Because here's also what used to happen way back in the day. Because you are in the office, because you are immersed in your job, you have a tendency to work later in the office, which means that you get home later, and you probably have heard all kinds of stories around the industry about how people have to do overtime here and there, and overtime in the crunch was incredibly big. I experienced those. I still think that is incredibly wrong, but part of the byproduct of actually doing this and asking people to work a little more is that some people don't know their limitations, or they just don't mind sleeping under their desks if they have to for months on end, because this is where they live, this is their passion, so therefore I'm going to give it my all. Now, I think that this breaks that way of thinking a little bit, because you now have to think very heavily about where you want to spend most of your time. And especially if you work fully remote, this gives you a chance to spend time with your family and your friends, right? And then because you are in your home environment, like now, this is where I used to work before, right? So you kind of think, do I want to be here stuck for like 10 hours a day? Or do I want to get out there, this is the door of my office. Do I want to get out there and just chill with my family for a little bit, or just go off and just meet a friend, or invite a friend over and have dinner downstairs, right? So it really changes your mindset, and it kind of makes you more sociable, and it forces you to be more sociable. I think I'm not the only one that the pandemic showed me that being social with others is actually a good thing, and you should seek it out because it makes you a better person and more stable and less stressed. And I think everybody's looking for this now, right? So I think this is really, really cool. It's awesome. I think it can like breaks your mindset a little bit about just working your behind on things that perhaps are not so important in the long run, especially as you have a young age and you just start in this industry, because as you become older, those things become a little bit more clear and you have more perspective on what matters and what doesn't. But when I started, it was all about the career. Like, how can I make it big? How can I actually be the best? All this stuff. And I think for most people that are actually very ambitious artists out there, is true. Now, last but not least, I think also people will most likely move away from cities more than before, because big studios are always in like big cities around the world, and it's exciting. But as you live in the city, as you want to have a family, as you want to chill, as you get older, you normally have a tendency to actually want a bit more of a relaxed environment, right? So this working remotely allows people like myself that likes to actually be outside the city, outside of the stress, to be able to actually perform at their best while having a setting that is quiet and nice. Because games are already stressful enough, so there's nothing better than going outside, seeing a bit of green, seeing a bit of animals, and just feel good. Know that games is not everything. That was really cool. Now, I think for all the companies out there that are going full remote, kudos to them. That is amazing, highly supportive. I think this is the future. However, something that I've noticed within my own team while I was working as a director is that working and living this way is actually better when you have a family, right? Or when you're surrounded by your family. It doesn't matter if you have kids or not, might be your parents, might be your brothers and sisters, but be surrounded by other people, because the people that actually struggled the most were the people that were living by themselves alone. Because what happens is, because you are working and you're working by yourself, that idea that I just mentioned before about not knowing when to stop and just going on for hours and working until late and not caring about things. So that kind of mentality is still true if you are by yourself here at home, because you don't have anybody to stop you. You don't have any situation that actually allows you to stop you. So I think that there is like a fine line there. It's not for everybody. Some people are better than others at actually getting off the seat, going off, being social, hanging out, all that stuff. But there is some people that are introverts that like to actually just be them by themselves. And for those people, things can be a little bit dangerous, because you can actually spin off axes, because you end up just by yourself all the time, and you kind of like go into this deep dark hole that you don't want to actually go into, right? So if this is your case, make sure to go out there, socialize, and see other people, because games and work and career is not everything. So that's the downside of working this way. So in that way, I think until we get there, until we actually get into everybody works full remote, I don't know if that's going to happen, but if one day it happens, I think this hybrid type of work is actually really nice, especially if the company gives you options. And by options, I mean, which days do you want to stay in the office, which days do you want to stay at home? And then the person can choose more days at home, less days in the office, or vice versa. Because I do think that there is something to be said about working with others and seeing others and having the vibe of each other and knowing exactly what other people are working on and being able to admire other people's work and ask for opinions face to face. Nothing actually beats human interaction, right? So one way or the other, make sure you find it. But I do think that this new way of working is here to stay, and the companies that embrace it, I think will do amazingly well, right? I think that there is a bright future for everybody out there, and for all animators out there, just think from now until the future that you're not only competing with the market around where you live, but now you're competing with the world. So you have to actually better your skills, you have to better your showreel. You have to make sure that your skills are up to par and think outside the box and make sure you are unique, because competition just got even more hard, and that is not necessarily something good depending on where you are, but at the same time it will push you to actually create amazing things. And that is basically what I think about this hybrid remote type of work. I think it's beautiful, I think it's nice, I embrace it and I love it. And right now I'm actually working fully remote, doing freelance gigs and a few more things outside, because I'm no longer working as an animation director, and it's working great. And this is why I wanted to make this video, to make sure that you guys know that there is a bright future out there if you're actually looking for remote work, if your company doesn't do it right now, right? And that's about it. If you enjoyed this video, if it was useful to you, Make sure that you consider subscribing down below. Hit the bell button so you make sure that you don't miss any videos. And I want to mention my Patreons because they really support me every month. Make sure to check out my Patreon, to check out my perks if you actually want to join the family, exclusive videos, and much more, so you guys can actually get more of the channel. All the support is highly appreciated. If you actually want to talk animation, hang out, and talk some more about this stuff, make sure that you comment down below, let me know what you think, and if you want to talk even further, join my Discord. We have a bunch of great people over there. We're talking a lot about animation and good stuff, so don't miss out. All the links down below, and as usual, stay well, stay safe. Peace.